You've been here before, haven't you? Of course. It is always an honor to have a repeat customer here at Needful Things. Feel free to browse and let me know if you have any questions. And even if you decide not to buy, there's no need to rush. You might as well stay here and wait out the storm. Oh, I see this whimsical item has caught your eye. You'll notice that he has been well used, and the years have taken their toll. He has been on quite a journey. You can see it in his eyes. Yes, I can well imagine this mechanical toy's entire history, just by looking at him. It's a rather interesting story, and if you'd like to pull up a chair and have a cup of tea, I would be more than happy to tell you what little I know about the history of our jolly little companion here, the monkey. Since the golden age of Greece, humans have been trying to bring life to machinery. Heron of Alexandria is said to have made mechanical birds, and Leonardo da Vinci designed a clockwork lion as a gift to the Pope. But as society segued to steam engines and locomotive technology, the artistry of springs and gears dwindled down to the provinces of watchmakers, and of course those innovative inventors of wind-up toys. Why, what child could fail to fall in love with such merriment? And who could resist a wind-up monkey, with a delightful smile, peeping eyes, and cymbals that clash, jang, jang, jang. This fine fellow you see before you is a prototype of the infamous Jolly Chimp by the Daishin CK Company in Japan, though this little chap was made in Hong Kong. The Jolly Chimp was an enormous success. From the late 1950s onward, it was so popular, there have been many oft-brand imitations, most of which are not clockwork, but battery-operated. This jolly little monkey, on the other hand, is a good old-fashioned wind-up toy. By the way, these promotional images you are looking at were produced by the Horror Monster Collectibles Channel, a fine establishment filled with its own treasure trove of wonders. You should stop by and visit them after this storm subsides, if it ever does. I cannot be certain how many times this monkey has passed from one owner to the next. If the rumors are true, it may have been in the dozens. What rumors? Well, that is what makes this item so intriguing. You see, there are those who believe that this friendly little toy is cursed. I don't know that that's true, but I do know that the last man to purchase this novelty item was a merchant mariner named Shelburne. He was a navigator, and his life as a sailor led him from one port to the next, exotic places, such as the Hawaiian Isles or the decadent docks of Singapore. But Shelburne had a wife, always anxious for him to return home to their 2-story house in Hartford, Connecticut, not to mention to his 2 young sons, William and baby Hal. During one of the final voyages of his life, he stopped in a little curio shop to buy a present for his children. We do not know if it was obtained at Mr. Wing's antique shop, or Merlin's shop of so-called mystical wonders, or another establishment somewhere on the coast of Asia. Maybe it was meant for Christmas or a birthday. We may never know, because the wandering sailor kept it hidden in the back closet among an array of nautical knickknacks. And before he could present it to his sons as a gift, Shelburne went to sea one last time and disappeared, vanished out of our story, much like a paper boat washed down a storm drain. And so Mrs. Shelburne never knew if her husband had abandoned his family, or if the rocky waves knocked him overboard to perish in the big blue. And she certainly did not know that the father of her children was taking one final gasp of air, just as this little wind-up toy brought together his symbols. As the toy sat in the dark of the closet. How can I possibly know this, you may ask? Oh, you can tell just by looking into this monkey's eyes, can't you? Just as I know that Mrs. Shelburne's life was not easy, raising her boys as a single mother. She worked as a secretary for an aircraft company, and did her best to provide for Will and Hal. And their childhood was pleasant enough, until one day, when Hal was only 4 years old, he tiptoed away from Beulah, his sleeping babysitter, and discovered a monkey hidden in a Ralston Purina box in the back closet. What a splendid surprise that must have been, though he was surely disappointed when he wound the key only to find the toy monkey remained perfectly still, apparently broken. Young Hal put the toy on his bedroom shelf and went to sleep. Then, in the middle of the night, the Jolly Chimp began to clang his cymbals. Oddly enough, at precisely that time, a man named Leonard White, 25 years old, flew into a rage over whether he and his girlfriend should pick up Chinese food takeout. The argument ended with several gunshots, resulting in the death of his girlfriend, whose name was Beulah McCaffrey, Hal's 19-year-old babysitter. Coincidence? Perhaps. Certainly Hal did not suspect anything sinister until he was 7 years old, alone in the house after coming home from school. Then, what sound do you think the boy heard? Jing, 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 jing. The monkey, yet again, clapping its cymbals from the upstairs bedroom. At the same time, Hal's brother Bill and Bill's dear friend Charlie Silverman were crossing the street as an old Hudson Hornet barreled around the corner. Bill was unharmed, but Charlie was not so lucky. The car did not slow down, and the vehicle knocked the boy right out of his Red Ryder cowboy boots, and the poor child's head shattered the vehicle's windshield. Charlie died instantly, but surely it was the fault of the drunk man behind the wheel, and not some mechanical monkey. Still, Hal put the toy back in the closet, just to be safe. Funny phrase, that, for really, is anyone ever safe? Apparently not. For when Hal was 10, he returned home from school and found the toy back on the shelf. Perhaps the sight of those eyes frightened Hal, but perhaps they also mesmerized the lad. For the boy, for reasons of his own, wound the turnkey on the monkey's back, and this time it worked. And as those lips smiled, those eyes gaped, and those cymbals clashed, Hal's mother stood at the office water cooler at the helicopter factory, and she suffered a severe, spontaneous brain aneurysm. No pain, just death. After the funeral, the orphaned boys were taken in by Uncle Will and Aunt Ida, and they moved to a little hamlet outside of Bridgeton, Maine. Perhaps you are familiar. But before bidding farewell to his sad childhood home, young Hal stuffed the monkey back into the Purina box, letting the local Ragman carry the toy away with the rest of the unwanted items. So, for a brief time, the ownership of this curiosity shifted, but only briefly, for the Ragman, an Italian immigrant, took a shine to this monkey, and he decided to keep the toy for his grandson. But that was not meant to be, for the poor Ragman set the monkey on the bathroom shelf next to his Philco radio. Then he soaked in the tub, listening to the Brooklyn Dodgers. By this time, you are probably already predicting that our Italian friend is not long for this world, and you would be correct. But it wasn't just a coincidence or a mystical curse this time. The monkey started clapping, and his cymbals knocked the electric radio into the bathwater. Needless to say, the Ragman's grandson never got his present. But of course young Hal knew nothing of these events. The mechanical menace was now out of sight, out of mind, for he and his older brother had been settling into their new home, just as winter began settling in. It was Christmas time. Snow fell from a cloudy sky, and Crystal Lake was frozen over. Young Hal had almost forgotten about the toy with the mischievous grin, until one evening Aunt Ida sent him up to the attic to fetch wrapping paper, and guess who was back? Of course, I see by the look in your eyes the logical explanation is that this must have been a different Jolly Chimp, purchased from a different store, for how could this one have traveled from the dead Ragman all the way to Maine? I will let you think what you wish, but the boy believed that they were one and the same. So Hal scrambled out of the attic in a fright, but later he bravely returned, placing cotton balls between the cymbals and taping up the monkey's wrists. And a Merry Christmas was had by all. But soon came the spring, and that whimsical wind-up must have channeled Harry Houdini, because those cymbals clanged again from the darkness of the attic, and this time the chimes tolled for the poor dog named Daisy, who collapsed from a sudden hemorrhage. But she had seen 11 other springs, and must have been, about 80 in dog years. Not a bad run. Then, that summer, Hal's best friend, Johnny McCabe, was climbing up a treehouse, and then the last rung on the ladder came loose. That 30-foot drop snapped his neck. Or perhaps I should say it was the landing that snapped the boy's neck, and not simply the fall. But Hal did not blame gravity. He blamed our friend here, and so, hoping to rid of it once and for all, as they say, he cast the toy into the well, where the little monkey responded from the very bottom with his tinny little jang jang, jang jang jang, jang jang jang, jang jang jangity jang. And that afternoon, the family cat was hit by a car. Tragic indeed, especially with no pet cemetery nearby. But Hal could finally sleep, knowing the monkey was gone. And so it was, for almost 30 years. But during that time, Uncle Will passed away, supposedly from natural causes, and 6 years later Aunt Ida died of a stroke. Did she hear the monkey's symbols in the last moment of her life? Well, even I don't know all of the details to this story. But I do know that time had passed and Hal became a middle-aged husband with 2 incorrigible sons. And in the autumn they returned to the old house in Maine in order to attend to Aunt Ida's estate. And guess what Hal's older boy, Dennis, found in the attic? His old friend. Somehow Jolly Chimp returned. Out of the well, after all those years, out of Hal's mind, while he was growing up, going to college, becoming a software architect, dealing with adult problems like mortgages and layoffs, and finally setting into a ho-hum marriage and a lower-paying job at Texas Instruments. Yes, indeed, Hal had probably forgotten all of those nightmares, both real and imaginary. But that monkey's smile must have brought back all of those memories. He was shocked, to say the least, and snatched the toy away from his curious children. He brought his old friend back to their motel room, yelled at the boys, warning them not to touch it, told his wife to take a Valium, and then he kept the monkey in his suitcase, still stunned by its reappearance. After 2 nights in the motel room, with the monkey locked up nice and tight in the Samsonite suitcase, Hal began to walk in his sleep and sit on the bed with the monkey on his lap. It was a rough night, to say the least, but the symbols did not cling. The monkey was biding its time. And that morning, Hal saw that the wind-up toy was on the hotel windowsill, staring at Hal and his son Pete. It was the final straw. That afternoon, Hal hatched an idea. If the well was not deep enough, perhaps the lake would suffice. He sent his son outside to collect 4 stones into the flight bag. And as Hal looked out the window, watching his son walk across the parking lot, a car came speeding around the corner, just like old times. The Jolly Chimp was about to clash its symbols together, so Hal ran toward it. Why, it was almost like a scene from a horrible movie that probably stole this idea from a better author. And just as in that low-budget B-movie, Pete's father saved the day with a quick karate chop. And so the monkey was stowed into the flight bag and brought back to Crystal Lake, where locals say that on that October day the weather became very unusual. The boy stayed on the dock while the father went into a rowboat and paddled across the lake, fighting the stormy waves. And when he reached the deepest part of the lake, Hal plunged the monkey into the murky depths, in hopes that our jolly little friend would never clang again. And as far as Hal and his son are concerned, it never did. Yet, for those of us who follow the Bridgeton newspaper as I do, there was an article published on October 24th, 1980, that noted a disturbing phenomenon. Hundreds of dead fish were floating belly up in the lake. Well, now that brings the story around to the present, and I see you're wondering, how did I happen to come upon this sorry little monkey? Well, it turns out that the authorities dredged Crystal Lake, looking for a drowned boy that had apparently frightened a camp counselor. They never found the boy, but they did find our jolly little chimp. And doesn't he look remorseful? Hasn't he learned his lesson, and isn't he ready to find his forever home? Surely the curse wasn't real. And even if it was, I'm certain that a wise customer like yourself can understand the value of such an item. If, say, a certain elderly relative with a substantial sum in the bank just won't let go, you can see the possibilities. Ah, I see you've finished your tea, and the rain has stopped. And since you seem so entranced by this playful little primate, I'll leave you two alone, and you can think it over. He is priced very reasonably, I can assure you. A discount, you see. For as I have said, the wind-up key does not work, and it is doubtful that his cymbals will ever ring out again. Doubtful. Yes, doubtful indeed, that we will never hear his little jing jing, jing jing jing, jing 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 jing, jing 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 jing.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Stephen King Book Club. And I'd like to give a special shout out to the Horror and Monster Collectibles Channel on YouTube. They kindly granted permission to use all of that cool video footage of that gnarly toy monkey. And if you'd like to watch their full video, which includes a less fictional overview of the history of this toy, I will include the link here. And I will also include links in the description to Horror and Collectibles and some of the other video clips used in tonight's presentation. And as always, constant reader, thank you for liking, subscribing, and supporting the Stephen King Book Club.